because I believe that in everything we do, you land, you run fast, you pivot, you evolve. And that's exactly what I've done in order to put Motherswork on the map, not just in Singapore, but in China and hopefully the rest of Southeast Asia.
Hi, I'm Serena Barwani, and I'm really excited to be here today. They say there's no formula for success, but what if there is? After countless conversations with entrepreneurs, I've noticed a pattern. Now, I'm on a mission to break it down and figure out exactly what makes a startup thrive. In this podcast, we'll explore the key ingredients, like education, mentorship, family influence, luck, and more, that contribute to an entrepreneur's success. We'll ask founders to weigh in on what factors matter the most in their cases, so you can focus on what really moves the needle in your own journey. Ready to crack the code? Let's dive into the entrepreneur's equation. Sharon Wong is the founder and chief executive officer of Motherswork, a company that she established 27 years ago. Motherswork is an omni-channel retailer specializing in premium mother, baby, and kids products. Her attention to detail, commitment to excellence, and strong business acumen are not only a reflection of her ability to build a multi-million-dollar retail empire, but also demonstrates her innovative spirit. A firm believer in turning ideas into reality and a relentless learner, Sharon is an inspiration to us all. So, hi Sharon, how are you? I'm really excited that you're on my podcast.
Hello, Serena. Thank you for having me.
Well, I went through your website and I learned that you have a love for traveling. Can you share any of the places that you've been?
Oh, gosh, counting. I think one of the things that I do when I'm not at work is actually to take my 3 children on a journey. And I believe strongly that exposure to different cultures and diversity makes us wholesome. So travel is always on the plan.
What are some of the cultures you've experienced?
I think when we live in a society where we're so entrenched into a certain culture and a certain dynamic, it makes us forget that there are people who are different from us, who have different backgrounds, different socioeconomic groups, and that makes us better. And it also helps in terms of my journey as a woman, a mom, a daughter, and an entrepreneur. And all that is exposure, which money can't buy, and it doesn't come in a handbook.
Yeah. Well, you've lived all across the globe, like namely Malaysia, Singapore, Australia, Hong Kong, and the USA. Is there any place I've missed?
No. So those were the main places, but I spent a lot of time in Japan as well as in France, in Paris in particular, because my 3 children actually attended the French-American school. So one of my things, when I decided was very early on that my children has to learn French because I couldn't. And it's a culture that I thought would be so amazing if you could speak the language. So I put them in the French-American school. And so they're fluent in French. And every summer for the first, I think up to year 6 for each and every one of them, every summer we would spend 2 months in France. Wow. Just so that they can get fluent. And they are actually first, I think they speak without an accent. And I remember once we were there on holiday and the waiters were saying, ignore the adults, just speak to the children.
I've been wanting to take French. How have these countries that you've been to shaped who you are today?
I said through the decades, right? So from Australia as a young girl, as a student as well, I think one of the things that I walk away from Australia was the courage to speak. In my second year at university, we had some issues with one of the group assignments, and the professor called us all into his office. And everybody was trying to explain why our assignments were similar but not similar. And they couldn't explain themselves. And me, at the time, I rather not speak up if I didn't have to. I was one of those quiet ones. But I forced myself, and I just broke out and said, look, and I explained, and apparently I was so articulate, and the professor said to me, Sharon, why don't you speak up more? Because I believe if you speak up, people will listen. So that changed me as a young student. And what I learned from Australia was that when I speak, people listen. So I learned to speak up more, not just talk, but speak. And then I think Hong Kong was when I first became a mother. And that sparked my love, or rather my belief that motherhood should not be so overwhelming. And by the time I had my son, baby number 3, he was 10 months when we moved to the US. And in America was where I learned to be the mother I want to be.
That's very nice. How have you used courage in your business?
I always say, look, there's 4 acts of courage in my life, and I believe that everything else comes with acts of courage. My first act of courage, I grew up in a small town in Malaysia. My first act of courage at 16 was to find courage to leave the country for a world adventure, I call it. I think at the time, I was not a good student. So by the time I woke up at 16, I realized that if I didn't do something, I wouldn't be able to get into the local universities, and I wouldn't be able to go overseas. I wouldn't be able to get a degree. And to me, to a 16-year-old, that piece of paper is going to open doors for me. So my first act of courage was to leave the little town that I was born and grew up in search of a grand adventure, which was a better future. And my second act of courage was actually then to leave a high-flying corporate career to get me to becoming an entrepreneur. And it was goodbye business class and hello cattle class.
Were your parents supportive of this?
Yeah. So actually, I always attribute this to 2 illiterate women, my grandmother and my mom, both illiterate, but their acts of courage was actually what pushed me, or rather encouraged me, to go beyond where I was born in search of a life for me, the grand adventure, rather than making my life very small. So I think one of the things I say to our children today is, I don't want you to live with me. I don't want your life to be small so that you are surrounded and taking care of me. I want you to have a life of your own in search of that grand adventure, wherever that is. Because I think that is what's important. And so I do believe that that is very, very important for the life that I have led and the life that I want my children to lead.
So what was your ideal picture of this grand adventure?
It was a white canvas. There is no picture on it, because I believe that in everything we do, you land, you run fast, you pivot, you evolve. And that's exactly what I've done in order to put Motherswork on the map, not just in Singapore, but in China and hopefully the rest of Southeast Asia.
So tell me, what was a typical day in the life as an entrepreneur for you?
Fighting fire every day. I think like I said, you land, you run fast, you pivot, you evolve. And China was one of the biggest projects. I think it was our first location outside Singapore. Singapore is easy, Everyone would say that when you do business in your backyard, you live here, you grew up here, you know the landscape. But going outside has always been a challenge. And there are many businesses that have gone out and failed, and there are those left. I mean, we're here 12 years now, having entered China, and I'm here still to tell the story. Every day is about fighting fire, and every day is about finding solution, making decisions. I think one of the things for entrepreneurs and which we downplay is the trust in your ability. That takes courage to find answers and make decisions. Whether it's right or wrong, you've got to make a call. And as soon as you make that call, something else will come up, and you have to pivot and you have to run fast and then evolve.
So you would say risk-taking is a big part of being an entrepreneur?
I don't like to use the word risk-taking. I always say it's possibilities, right? Opportunities. When someone look at something and say, what are the risks? I would say, well, imagine the possibilities. Yes, if you want to call it risk-taking, then yes, you're taking a risk to go out. But for me, it's an opportunity to go out. Because without thinking about the opportunities, some people will never take the risk. But if it's an opportunity, you see the opportunity and you go for it.
Yeah. What gave you the courage to go out?
Like I said, my life was maybe because of my family background. Right? Like I said, two illiterate women. My mom learned to drive against all odds to pass her driving test so that I could attend school. My grandmother pitted against my dad in a generation where if my dad could only afford to send one child, it would be the boy. So my grandmother said to my dad, well, if she wants to go, let her go. Right? So I think those two women didn't see any obstacles in the path, and they opened up, the bridges for me to move seamlessly. So for me, that was just normal to move from that on. A 16-year-old girl leaving my hometown in Ipoh in those days when everything was analog, going to Australia and starting out and then learning. And I don't believe that there's a certain milestone, but I believe everything you do is a journey that leads you to the next. It's experience, right? But of course, coming back to your question, yes, it takes courage, and you need people to give you courage.
That's very powerful. Did you have any other mentors?
When I was at the US multinational, I had two bosses, Australian and Dutch. And I always say that I support women. I would love women to step up more. But my mentors in my early years were always men, because they pushed me beyond the level and they gave me opportunities before I was even ready.
Have you ever faced any gender bias?
No. I don't know whether it's because I don't see it and I just soldier on. I think we talk about this all the time. We talk about women. We talk about glass ceiling. I'm always in conflict. But I think it's a personality thing, because I just charge forward and I don't see obstacles. I keep running. When I come to a crossroad or a roadblock, we have this joke when we first went to China, that my forehead was getting bruised all the time because we kept hitting against the wall of all the different things that were happening. But you find the hole and you break through. So I feel like, I'm always in conflict with this question, because I work with a lot of women and I meet a lot of women entrepreneurs, and we're always talking about there's not enough women on board agenda. We don't have enough women in this. But I've never really thought that women were being held back by anyone. And most importantly, I think sometimes we hold ourselves back.
So you founded Motherswork 27 years ago. Why and how?
Like I said, it's probably my biggest act of courage. I became a mother. When I was pregnant with my first child, I wanted the best to raise my baby. Not everybody's baby, but mine. And in those days, there were not a lot around in terms of options on what products and information. This is analog time, remember? No internet. And having been disappointed and run around through a lot of other stores, my milk was leaking, my baby was crying, they couldn't tell me what was wrong. I decided that I wasn't going to sit around and wait for someone else to build this. I was going to build it. So my desire to find the best baby products to raise my babies created the entrepreneur. So I started Motherswork to be the shopping experience, my personal shopping experience for me, not just for everybody, for me and everyone else who want to personalize their journey. So today people talk about customization and experience. We did that 27 years ago.
Is there anything else you would do differently if you had more access to the internet, or?
Well, so every 3 to 5 years, the business changed. Someone said to me once, hey, Sharon, aren't you bored 27 years in doing the same thing? I'm like, you guys have no clue. Every 3 to 5 years, everything changes. So we started with analog. You're too young to remember the yellow pages. Every year we get this thick yellow pages and white pages. And that's how we get information. And of course, today we're an omni-channel business, from online platform to online website, our own brands.com, as well as baby fairs, events, pop-ups, and our own retail store. So the business has pivoted over the last 27 years because of market changes and market conditions, and everything changed. So you learn. Would I have done it differently? I have done it differently. I have evolved over the last 27 years into an omni-channel business and multi-country.
Wow. What was the initial process of setting up the business?
I am financially trained and I'm an accountant as well. So corporate legal law, I understand. So the process of just getting all the basic done for me was taken for granted. I know that today you can go to a ComSec and set up a company and get that rolling, right? But actually those are just mundane stuff that I feel that you can just go to anyone to help you set up. But what is really required to actually start and run and scale a business is that you have to run fast, you evolve with the times, with one foot on the pedal, looking at the current, and one foot looking forward, just to look at the changes.
How did you market your business when it was brand new?
Very interesting question. How did I market the business? So we took a retail store, not within a mall because we couldn't afford it, and I have no experience in retail. I wanted an experience, right? I wanted a space where people could come together and talk about motherhood and what products. So I would purchase all the products that I would use. And in those days, to be a wholesaler, it was you only have to buy 4 pieces. So I'll use one and I'll put the other 3 in the store. And somehow, through word of mouth, I realized that I am not a special mom. I'm not the only one who wanted the best stroller, the most latest color. There are other moms who are like me. Just because it wasn't available in the market doesn't mean that nobody wants it. So we were outside a mall, hardly did marketing, but through word of mouth. Because over the years, it was always like, let's go meet at Motherswork. And we became a community by default. I always call I'm an accidental entrepreneur. I'm an accidental community builder. But for some reason, we managed to pivot and bring women together. And with one common goal, they all have it in them. They were all going to go into a new journey of becoming a mother. And this is, no matter 27 years, this is always a new experience. And it's the same old stuff. We all know what the pain points, we know what the solution is. But for every woman, it is their first time. And so by default, we somehow stepped into marketing. So someone said to me, do you have a marketing budget? I'm like, yeah, I'm trying to be very professional. I'm trying to put everything down with an SOP, but actually a lot of it was because we built it over the years. One thing led to another. So the community that we have today was built over, very strong today, was built during COVID. So one of the things when COVID happened in Singapore, I took to live Instagram, and I would sit in front of my phone almost every week and look at myself at the phone, and I talk to people. And this is not something that I would have done, and this is not something I'm comfortable doing because I love to talk to people one-on-one, but I can't just talk to myself. But I realized that in order to reach moms during the pandemic, I had to be out there to remind them that they're not alone. So we started Heart to Heart, which is a learning journey to share with all the women out there that they're not alone. So we're just sharing different women's journey, whether they're entrepreneurs, whether they're a mother of 1, mother of 4. And then beyond that, I also added Meet the Makers because the stores were not open. So we wanted people to understand and meet the face behind the brand. And we talk about that. So that's all evolving, right? So then that became marketing. And when everybody caught on and they said, oh, that's a great marketing idea, well, oh, that was just second nature.
Did you face any failures during COVID?
You know, the first failure was actually Motherswork started in Hong Kong. When I was living in Hong Kong and my first child was born in Hong Kong. So we opened our first store in Hong Kong with no retail knowledge. But then I moved back to Singapore and let somebody run the store, and it kind of ran to the ground because I didn't know how to run retail across borders. So started again in Singapore, but realized later that as you grow and learn, you somehow learn how to transfer knowledge across borders. So that's how China came along. But my first failure was we started in Hong Kong 2 years before we even started in Singapore. So during the pandemic, I can only say that it was opportunities and success stories because we came out of COVID much stronger because we've managed to build a whole new community through, I guess, social media, which, I don't think we would have had the opportunity to pause and do this because you're always running fast, because we were in China already. And I remember that I was still very focused on trying to grow China. And I think if not for the pandemic that made me pause, because I can't travel, we were all stuck at home, right? That made me pause to think about what else we can do. And when the whole world stops together, you're not being left behind. That gave me that opportunity to pivot and came out stronger. So Motherswork is much stronger because I know a lot of people died, a lot of issues with the pandemic, but as a business, we came out much stronger.
Do you think businesses should adapt more to social media? Is it like positive or?
Yeah, that's the new wave, right? So you need to take, the new marketing is no longer advertising in print, right? Magazines are, so many magazines. I think when we first started, we would advertise in the Finders, Motherhood, Pregnancy. All the prints are out and everybody's pivoted to digital. Now, how successful they are, it's a matter of how relevant you remain. But what we do a lot now is that we work with a lot of real moms, right? We talk about not just KOLs, but moms who are going through all the issues and are using the products. This is, I think, very important, because as we get towards the generation where social media is the norm, then you want it to be real rather than an ad, because people believe. So that's why we don't look at numbers, we don't look at their following, we actually look at conversions.
Yeah. Do you think, as you said, being an accidental entrepreneur requires a lot of luck?
I started off saying this formula. I think a lot of people ask me, well, what does it take to be a successful entrepreneur? And I said it's PPVL: passion, purpose, vision, and a little bit of luck. And I think when we talk about luck, it is not like winning 4D, right? Luck is actually the time that cross between opportunity presents itself and when you are willing and able to take that challenge. Because I've said this to many young entrepreneurs who I've met along the way, they fail to take when the opportunity presents itself. Either they lack the courage or they didn't think they were ready, rather than saying, the first thing I do is I always have my hand up. I'm ready, even though I'm not ready, because I know the minute I land, I learn to run fast, evolve. So I think you miss the opportunity when opportunities don't come all the time. When they do present itself, you better be ready. And ready means ready to run and willing, not just that I can do it now, thinking in your head that you can do it now.
Have you ever regretted not taking an opportunity? And what effect has it had?
There must be plenty, but I don't remember any specific because I've moved on. Like I said, every journey, you keep moving forward, you run your own race. I'm sure if we have the time and if I take the time to sit down, I'm sure there are many opportunities that I miss. But the thing is, someone said to me once, Sharon, don't you think you should be in tech? I'm like, I'm a tech user. But even if I knew how, I don't think I would have gone into the tech industry because it was just not on my radar. But, to say that, I should have been in tech and therefore do what it needs to be done, I think it's just a matter of what you're exposed to, what you're comfortable with, and you run, right? The purpose that drives you in your journey is what's very important. So I always say PPVL. So if you need a formula, it's PPVL and a little bit of courage.
You mentioned relevancy is very important. So what does Motherswork do to stay relevant?
I actually base myself in the store rather than in the office so that I get to meet the moms and the customers, who is actually what's important, right? What moms want. So Motherswork, the Motherswork as in 11 alphabets, each alphabet stands for a value. So M is for multi-purpose. O is for original. And then E is endorsed by parents. So when you go through, and all the products and brands that we bring into Motherswork must meet at least 4 of these 11 values. And for me, this is, and very importantly, kind to the earth, right? Being relevant and endorsed by parents. So that's how we manage to remain relevant in this whole scheme of motherhood, right? Women journeying into the next phase, a very important phase of their life, to become moms. And they're always learning for the first time because there's so much to learn. And there's a lot of pain and that you go through, but you forget because it's almost like a journey that you go through, and you forget all the pain, late nights, breastfeeding, because then you look at your baby and like, oh, so cute.
What are the 4 most important values, would you say?
Multi-purpose, so that it's not single use because of the current environment that we're in. Original, I really believe that we want products that are original rather than just a copy of something, because we are serving the community of moms, right? We're the safety of children. We don't want to compromise. E, endorsed by parents, endorsed by moms, so they've tried and tested. And then, of course, K, kind to the earth, because I believe that we should leave the planet a little bit better for the generations to come.
So you frequently mention how much you rely on your team. What is the secret to building a team?
Empowering them. So my senior management team has been with me for over 20 years. Motherswork is 27 years. So my senior management team has been with me for over 20 years. Some of them started when they were young men and young women. Now they have young children and teenage children. So we train them, we work with them. And I think what's important is that I empower them to learn and make decisions. I think one of the most important things, and we recently talked about this, is that I raise my children the same way. My husband and I always believe that our children should be empowered to make decisions. Right or wrong, we want you to make the decision rather than I give you the end game, right? The results. Because the trust that you learn, the trust that you believe in yourself to make a decision, doesn't come easily if you don't have practice. So families that parents make decisions for their children until they're 16 or 18 before they go overseas or before they leave home to go to university, actually I feel it's quite challenging for the child. First time you leave home and you have to you left home, you have to learn everything, and you also have to rely on to trust yourself to make the right decision. So I think if you empower people to make decisions, right or wrong, because they will learn faster. So one of the things that I did very early on was that I allow them to make decisions. I know the result, and sometimes I get frustrated. I'm almost tempted to say, look, this is what I want you to do. But I wanted them to get there on their own. So I think in giving them that power, they learn to grow, and they realize that they're learning, and they don't come to you and they say, I've learned everything I can from you and I need to move on to another company.
So what do you think the difference is between empowering and influencing?
I think empowering is something that I could actually give to the team for them to take upon themselves. Influencing is actually the power to make them believe that this is the right decision.
As a mother and a businesswoman, how do you balance your professional and personal role?
I don't like to use the word balance. I often get asked, how do I run a business and have a family? I believe in the power of and. I believe I can be an entrepreneur and a mother. And one of the things that we women do so seamlessly, yet we undermine this, is that we are daughters, we are granddaughters, we are mothers, we are wives, and we are professional career women or business women. And we move across these roles seamlessly every hour. And we undermine this without thinking about it, right? So to me, it's just one of those things that you move seamlessly across, and you believe in the power of and. I can be a mother, I can be a professional woman, I can be an entrepreneur, I can be a wife, and rather than balancing one or the other or choosing. And this is something that I always believe strongly, that women should acknowledge and embrace the power that they're inbuilt in women. And we can have babies. It's a privilege to be pregnant.
Yes. How would you describe your leadership style?
Always in conflict. Everything I do is always in conflict. So in fact, in the early days when we were starting the business, and I was also learning what retail is about, I think I was a little bit more authoritative, and the team was young. So even though we were learning together, they were looking to me for decision. But as the team grew and as I grew as an entrepreneur and as a mom, I think my style changed to become a little bit more, like you said, influencing, trying to open up the floor for them, because the minute I say something, they're like, okay, yeah, we're going to do this. So it kills our creativity, right? And I think this comes with age and experience, and taking a step back and really opening up the floor and listening to them. Sometimes is really back to, I could have saved an hour, and this is exactly what we would have done. But that thought process actually helped the team grow as well over the years. And I think China is probably one of those, I guess, experiences that we could share. The team today running China is the same team that we first hired. When we went into China, everybody said, Chinese, they won't stay with you. They're going to leave for $100 more. But the team has stayed with us from the beginning. And they've now grown up and taken over the reins, and they run China. A very successful China for Motherswork.
What is it like working in China?
Run fast. The Chinese speed is very fast. Chinese have deep pockets, and they're hungry, and they're smart. And so what we had to do was really stick to our core belief of the business without pivoting, without giving into doing discount in order to sell the products, but in believing that it's the experience and building brands that make us different from everyone else.
Okay. Oh, well, I also know that you worked in Vietnam. Congratulations, by the way, on the 1 year.
Yes.
How is it like working in Vietnam?
Vietnam is challenging because we're in a premium category. So obviously, Vietnam is a developing market. A lot of opportunities. That's why we decided to go into Vietnam, and we were very excited. So it's been a year. We have 2 locations now, and online, offline, as well as wholesale as well. So it's a farm to table opportunity that we've created in Vietnam, and changing the landscape for the way young moms in Vietnam shop for their babies.
Were there any similarities in the way you adapted in Vietnam and China?
In fact, Singapore, China, Vietnam, it's pretty similar in terms of the needs of parents. We don't change. The only thing that is a little bit different is culture. So certain things that is needed in China by the local moms and Vietnam differs from Singapore, but the basic of supporting women as they journey into motherhood is across borders. We also recently started a few brands in Thailand, and we're about to launch in Malaysia as well. And each market as we enter, we learn little local habits, maybe culture. But in general, I would say 90% is very similar of the journey of a woman into motherhood.
So tell me about your own brand, Little Ray. How did you come up with it?
Little Ray. So during the pandemic, I was bored, staying home. I did 3 things. I wrote a book called Wool Mom, living my life as a warrior woman and mom, where I share my journey as a girl growing up in Malaysia, leaving Motherswork, and then now a mother of 3. Then I launch a whole series of live stream to reach our young moms and our moms who are staying home, and a new brand called Little Ray. So Little Ray is actually a brand where we believe in working with our manufacturers using sustainable materials to bring all the essentials to moms. So we have bamboo swaddles, we have bamboo stretch wraps, and everything that is needed for a daily essential to for a mom to raise their baby from newborn to 6 months.
Wow. So back to your book. Did you write it out of boredom? What inspired you to write it?
Yes, there's a joke with the team that when Sharon is bored, we all get very busy. So with no end, without knowing, this is the very beginning, as soon as Singapore locked down, right? I didn't know what was happening. All I knew was I couldn't sit around and I needed to do more. So I thought, okay, why don't I share my journey? So I wrote a book really talking a lot of, in fact, my children were the ones who said, hey, Mom, you better ask us permission if you want to share a lot of stuff about us. But then when the book came out, that, oh, it's all about mother's work. But actually, it's not. It's just my journey. It's my first book. Working on the second book. The second book, I haven't decided on the title, but my daughter said, how about accidental entrepreneur, accidental feminist? Yeah. I don't know. But it is more to do with the fact that now because also post-pandemic, Motherswork was acquired by the Parent Inc., which is a tech company. And together, we are going to go for the trajectory of being the largest in Southeast Asia. So my second book probably start scale, and sell to scale. I don't know. So these are some of the titles that are playing in my head. But I think one of the things that I like to do a lot as an entrepreneur is that having come this way, I feel that a lot of knowledge needs to be shared rather than disappear with me. So that's why I do a lot of mentoring, and I like to share so that, we can pass on some of the basic of what you need to start a business or to be an entrepreneur.
Well, I wish you the best of luck with this book.
Thank you.
So we're going to do a quick rapid fire round, which you should answer without thinking for too long. If you could have a gigantic billboard anywhere with anything on it, getting a message out to millions or billions, what would it say?
Journeying with women into motherhood.
What advice would you give a smart-driven college student about to enter the real world?
Run fast.
Who are the 3 most influential entrepreneurs that you look up to and draw inspiration from?
Oh gosh, that's a tough one. I don't want to commit to that.
Thank you, Sharon. Well, that's a wrap. Thanks for sticking around till the end. I hope you found this episode valuable. You might think there's no formula for success, but it seems like we're getting close to cracking it with each conversation. If you have any suggestions on who I should interview next, feel free to drop me an email, which will be in my bio. And remember, the insights you've heard today could be the very thing that moves the needle in your own entrepreneurial journey. Catch you in the next one.